Welcome to Redefining ABCD. So hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Larger Than Us. Today we have a fun topic. Sneha and I are going to be talking about the different generations and generation gaps. We're going to kind of go over a little bit about the kind of a stereotypical image of a generation, kind of like the life dynamics and relationships, and kind of talk dive into a little bit about like how they interact with each other. It sounds very vague right now. I promise you it'll be more detailed going into it. I'll be honest here, I'm like struggling with this intro. But we'll talk about we'll mainly talk about Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, and we'll try to talk a little bit about Gen Alpha. And for reference, Sneha and I are Gen Z, and our parents are like Gen X, and our older friends are millennials. So if that gives you the context of where our perspectives lie on this topic, I hope that helps. And so yeah, let's just go straight to it, so I don't continuously fumble the bag with this intro. So yeah, let's start with the stereotypes. I know Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z have each of those categories have quite a strong stereotype. What are those? What have you heard so far, and how do you feel like each of those generation labels vary from each other in the way that they approach life?
Well, I feel like okay, so I'll start with Gen Z because I feel like we're most familiar with that. In my head, I feel like the stereotypes with Gen Z is TikTok and social media, and there's a lot of not knowing older technology, like old school monitors and
Yeah,
old school gate like CD players.
modems.
Yeah, we're like behind. Like we have to be explained what a Walkman is, like that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? At least so Gen Z I also see as like two different sort of categories, right? There's like us, who is like uh to like 90s born Gen Z, and then there's early 2000s born Gen Z. And I feel like because of the introduction of like phones and stuff, like I feel like there is like we do act differently in with that age gap, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like. um but yeah, with younger Gen Z, I feel like I associate it more with um like hardcore social media, phones at like 10 years old, you know, like it's not a flip phone, it's like an actual iPhone. You just always like basically born and raised with a screen in their hands is what I imagine with
Yeah.
the younger Gen Zers. Um, and I also just like I guess the stereotype that I feel like our part of the Gen Z has to the younger Gen Z is like we almost like feel bad for them. We're like, oh, I don't know how you guys operate. Like, how do you live a world without social media? You basically just grew up with that, and you always had technology. That's kind of like, at least personally, me, I and a lot of the friends that I have were always like concerned for the younger. We're like, oh no, like they're not going to experience the same things that we did, and I don't know. It's not really a stereotype, but more an observation, I guess. Um, Millennials, I don't know. What are millennials? What do you think? Is there, I guess with the millennials, I also associate with like, they're kind of like an awkward sort of group between boomers and Gen Zers, in that they always like to like,
Yeah.
they don't really know where they are. They don't understand the assignment, I feel
It
like, you know, they're kind of in the middle.
it's yeah, it's like yeah, it's like sophomore year in high
Yeah,
school. Like freshman year, you're like a youngling. Everybody knows you're like the newest kid on the block.
yep.
Junior year, you're sort of important because you're basically doing whatever you need to for your future. And senior year, you're like done. You're about to go to college. Sophomore year, you're like, what am I? Like, what am
Yeah,
I
yeah,
doing?
yeah.
What's my identity? Like, it's kind of like that. I put that analogy with millennials from
Yeah,
my perspective, of
yeah, like they're
course.
either trying really hard not to be a Gen Zer or trying really hard to be a Gen Zer. There's no in between. They're really not into boomers though, which is what I've gathered from millennials. There's a lot of jokes
I
around
think they're like
boomers.
trying to break that. Yeah, they're trying to break the mindset that Gen X and Boomers have. I feel like they're like the eldest child in that sense, where like they're trying to kind of carve themselves out in
Yeah.
comparison to like Gen X is like, those are the types of stereotypes I get are like, I walked 20 miles barefoot to get water. Like that's how hard I worked to get where I am.
Yeah.
You have it all easy is how I foresee Gen X and boomers.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, I don't want to get it too ahead, but
No,
yeah.
no, no. I 100% agree. And I feel like there's also like for like there's almost like a I don't want to be like them. And I think that comes from because
Mhm.
there's like a lot of like social changes that happened in society. Like a lot of things that weren't acceptable before became suddenly very acceptable around the like that transition happened when millennials were younger, right? In a lot of fronts.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the LGBT community were fighting for their rights and they were like solidifying the
Mhm.
rights. So they were like kind of codifying and not codifying, but like they were there was like social norms were changing with that generation. And I feel
Right.
like that and I feel like because of that there's a lot of hatred from millennials. They're so anxious to detach themselves from the boomers because they're like, no, I don't want to be associated with those social sort of I don't know, like
In like the
traditional
identity.
mindset. Yeah,
Yeah.
like traditional mindset. They don't want to be,
Hmm.
attached to that anymore because society has moved away from that for the most part. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Sorry, I'm just like rambling at this point.
Oh no, 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 you're good. I agree with you. Like on the millennials point, like I agree with you what you're saying, and I feel like they're like the first people within our span of our lifetimes that we can like say that like really got to start thinking about their identity and like kind of applying it to their life. It wasn't kind of
Hmm.
like a side thing. It was like my life is going to be how I want it. They were like the first people to start thinking like that. I feel like, and I definitely agree with you with Gen Z. There is even though we're both Gen Z, I feel like we're on the older end of Gen Z,
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
there's like newer or baby version, like younger Gen Z people, and like you said, I like they were more of like the technology. Like they started with technology. At least we didn't start with technology at birth.
right.
We had the opportunity to play outside. Like parents can't say like you know how we talk about like oh poor kids they like are on the phones all the time. Like we didn't. We got to play outside. We got to see
Yeah,
life beyond technology a little bit more than on like younger Gen Z. So I definitely think there's a little like difference. Um, and I definitely think Gen Z is kind of like the second child to the millennials, where like we have that shot to kind of like pave our own path a little bit more confidently. Um, but yeah, I really the stereotypes for me are really the Gen X is like you got to work hard to get where you are. Millennials is like you don't necessarily you can work hard. You can also do things out of your comfort. Like you said, the social norms were redefined, and then Gen Z is kind of more embracing that. I feel like
yeah,
the representation in media that is not white has more prevalent in our generation than in previous generations. So we're able to kind of take that and run even more. And I'm
yeah,
sure Gen Alpha will be like zooming,
yeah.
like
Oh
by the
yeah.
time they're like
Oh
old
yeah.
enough to have their own minds.
Oh my
Like,
god.
yeah. So I think in that way, I think that's the stereo. That's like the buckets that I put in terms of mindset for each generation, and like I think that really drives how they approach things in life. Like a
Hmm.
really great one would be like career planning. I know my parents, Gen X, for them it was like safety and security. Like what is gonna like make sure that like what is gonna help me make sure that I'm gonna have food on the table. Like that type of mindset. Not like what do I really want to do with the rest of my life? Like no one really thinks about that
Yeah.
in their generation where we are thinking about that. Like I want to major in something where I'm excited to go to work every day, and it's not like work has to be done in order to be enjoyed, like life to be enjoyed is like the
Yeah.
mindset I feel like they have. I don't really know much about millennials because I have millennial friends, but like I never really grew up around a persona with millennials or Gen Alpha, so I can't really speak to that. But like that's where I kind of see that mindset being applied to like approaching problems. What you
Yeah.
think?
I agree. I feel like yeah, millennials. I have a couple of millennial friends, and yeah, besides like the occasional comment of like, "Oh, you youngster, you're so young, you'll get there," or I feel like also the way that
I
Gen
hate
Z
that.
is. Well, yeah, it happens. It's fine. You know what? When we get there, we'll do the same with the younger Gen Zers. We'll do the same with Gen Alpha. It's like kind of a rite of
That's true.
passage. we got to give the other generations a little bit of, we got to put them in their place sometimes. And that's, like we expect
Yeah.
it we expect it back too. It's welcome. Please make fun of us. It's great. It's a good time.
Mhm.
So how do you see yourself as a Gen Z?
Um, I definitely don't see myself as the youngin' one. I feel like sometimes I joke around and I'm like, I'm a boomer. Like I have
Oh my
like
god.
when people talk in like slang, I like have no idea what people are talking about. I'm like, you need to speak in English, please, because I don't understand. I'm not with the times. I definitely think I'm an older Gen Zer in the sense of like I don't know. I feel like I had to be emotionally mature a lot earlier in my life, so that's why maybe that's the reason why I'm not really like a typical Gen Zer. So I definitely see myself a little bit straying away from the stereotype. But I think the way that where I align in the with the stereotype is that I'm more bold in what I want to do with my life. I'm not just gonna like do what people tell me to do. If that make I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
making
yeah,
any
yeah.
sense, but
Yeah.
that like yeah, I'm going to carve my own path. I'm going to think for myself and carve my own path, and I'm not afraid to have those conversations if they are different to like a previous generation or a different mindset in my family, whether it be like a Gen X mindset or like or even older, like when I have to talk to like relatives in India and things like that. I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. And so in that way, I feel like I kind of align myself with the Gen Z stereotype. But yeah, I'm definitely a boomer when it comes to the slang and the TikTok and the social media, like getting it with the times, like whatever. But
I
yeah, how do you
no,
see yourself?
I no, I was gonna say another stereotype. The I feel like we all talk in a certain way now, like Gen Zers. Like there's a lot of slang. There's a lot of like my sister was telling me about one that I didn't embarrassingly know until very recently. Like that's cap. I was like, what the hell? What are you talking? What are we doing? What is
What's
this?
Cam?
I didn't
What?
know. I was like that's cap. That's cap. But like, if this is a common
Wait,
thing, I
wait,
have
how would you
never
use
realized.
it?
Like, oh, that's cool. That's cap.
Oh.
I don't. I think I'm using that
I'm a
right.
boomer.
I probably sound like a boomer right now. I should know what that is. But see, that should tell you. That should tell you exactly where I land on the Gen Z millennial. I think I'm actually a boomer in my brain is a boomer. Not my brain. Sorry.
My brain.
No, 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 no. My brain is not a boomer. Sorry. Let me go back. Let me backtrack. Hang on. Hang on. That was a mistake. We're gonna cut this out. That was wrong.
What if I leave it in here in the episode?
Hey, don't do that. Or do I don't? Okay, whatever. Whatever. It's fine. Whatever. You know what? Just it's fine. Keep it. Whatever. My heart, my heart is a boomer. All right, my heart is a boomer. Let's put it that way. My heart is a boomer. My heart is a boomer. And Gen Z, I feel like
Yeah, a heart's a boomer.
my heart is a
Yeah,
boomer.
your heart is a boomer. Your brain is Gen Z. Yeah,
My mouth is Gen Z, and my brain is millennial. That's what it is. Because
there you
I
go.
sound
There,
like a
I
Gen
agree with
Zer.
that.
I sound like a Gen Zer. People are like very surprised when I say something like a millennial would, and they're like, "What? You can think like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." They're also very surprised. Well, they're very surprised when I say I don't have a TikTok. I'm like, I never had Snapchat, not really, and I never really had TikTok ever. So, like that that's where I
Mood.
land on the Gen Z and millennial. That's where I'm at. I don't know what that is. I feel like
I love it. I love it. I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
well, okay, I have a question because of that. Do you find it easier to talk to people who are older than you or younger than you or the same age as you? Is there like a
Ooh.
difference? Is there a preference?
I mean, if I think about it, when I think about it, majority of my like close friends are older than me. Like you, like everybody's older than me. And so I think I click better with like the older people. I always just thought it was because I am in my mind I felt like I was older than I actually am. So maybe that's why. For some when I like talk to someone younger than me, I connect well with people who are super younger than me. weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
Like in like a like let me give you advice, like an older sister type of like age gap.
Yeah.
Um but if they're like 1 or 2 years younger than me, like and we're like the same age, let's say like same class, same grade, I tend to have a little bit more obstacles when trying to
Yeah.
understand that person. I don't want to generalize it, but that's just the experiences that I've had. Like in college, in high school, if they're like a little bit younger to me, and we're like seeing each other at a friend to friend level, like I had a little bit more difficulty in
Yeah.
comparison to someone who's older than me. Because a lot of my
I
friends are older. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I never really thought about it. I guess like people, maybe it's just also I haven't really interacted with people who are only like 2 years younger than me, and I'm also at a stage in life where I'm like, people who are 2 or 3 years younger are people who are straight up still in college, and I think in my head I'm like past that. I'm like I can't relate to you anymore. We're in a different part of our life, and we have been for a while. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I've experienced that more now because that we're in different points in our life, and like their
Mhm.
priorities are like much different than mine at this point, and I
Mhm.
don't know. That's not really generationally speaking, but maybe more like age gap, age difference. I don't know.
And
Life.
it could be priorities in life too.
Yeah,
Because like
yeah,
if I think about it, like people who are like in the same age as me that I gel well with, um, they're also, I feel like, more emotionally mature than like for their age, like what you would think for that person of that age.
yeah,
And so I end up gelling well with them because we're kind of, I think we're more aligned in how we think. So maybe it's just that. Maybe it is just the priorities. Well, I mean, that does tie with generation because, like, depending on your age, your priorities change. So it's
yeah,
like, I don't know. But I think it's just like, I think it is just a mindset too.
yeah. No, it definitely is also a mindset because I mean, like I said, like different things were happening, different things were being prioritized in society as a whole. So, of course, like we're all going to have different mindsets, different, whatever. Like what like you said, like when our parents were getting into the work, the whatever, like into the career paths, whatever, it was all like I just want to I just need a job to have put food on the table and sustain my family, and that's it. Like my job does not have to be anything more than it needs to be. And honestly, I kind of envy that, not gonna
Mm-hmm.
lie. Like I wish my brain was trained to do that because in reality, like I think people's mindsets, generationally speaking, changed a lot faster than the industries have. So, you know,
That's true.
so everyone in the industry, like we grew up in a system, in a school system, in a work whatever. We grew up with like we need to find meaning in what we do. Like we were taught to find meaning. We were trying
Mm-hmm.
to follow our passions, like that kind of stuff. And I don't think the jobs align with that because not every job requires that. Not every job is going to be like that, inherently. Like there's a lot more jobs that
I
people
mean,
want to do
yeah.
than jobs that they want to do. So like there's not there has to be people who do like the menial like sort of tasks in those jobs. But now everyone wants something more out of that. So who's going to do the menial tasks that are necessary, but, you know, I don't know. It's just like an
Yeah.
observation.
Yeah, I think that's valid. It's fair. Like everything, there's rules for everything because we need everything.
Mhm.
I think it's also to put it in this perspective where I really agree with you in the sense of the industry hasn't really like caught up is early career, like that mindset is, oh, you're young, you don't know what you want and you need time to
Mhm.
figure that out, or you're not necessarily ready to take on certain types of challenges. So you're kind of put into a bucket when you're early career, mid career, and senior in your career. And like with us knowing we want to do something valuable with our life so early on, it kind of feels like we're stuck. Like for
Yeah.
me personally, I feel like I'm stuck in a waiting game. Like I have to wait it, quote unquote, wait it out for like 2 or 3 years to in order to be then in a position where I'll enjoy myself because I'm providing value back
Mhm.
in a role that I enjoy. And I'm like you don't necessarily get to do that when you're early in your career. Like so it's like I that's where I also see like the industry like not changing is like we're learning at such a faster rate than what was anticipated or expected. So
Yeah.
that like early career tag or bucket is a lot different now, especially with the fact that like we were introduced to technology early on in our lives because it was invented when we were kids, like the first
Right.
email and like telephone and whatever. So like we're able to learn faster just because we've always got the opportunity to learn faster. And like in the industry, they're still stuck with like you need your years of service. You need to have those stripes under your belt
Yeah.
in order
Right,
to
right.
really be like that next level. Whereas where I feel like we're meeting that. So like the expectation now, I feel like back in the day, like applying to college, it was very much about academics and what you're doing. Now it's not just academics. Like that's another thing. Like it's also what are you like doing in like outside of school? What are you contributing to society? What are you volunteering? What are your leadership skills? We're already like
Yeah.
expected, like that baseline of being a good student or a good person in society is so much higher for us because that expectation is there. Like we're already set to such a high standard that like sometimes there are some individuals who are just so high performing that like or like low performing or like they just don't fit that bucket anymore. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that is kind of put out there for us for our quote unquote career.
Yeah. No, I agree. That I absolutely agree. It's difficult cuz you know, the industry is not changing, and also the expectations are getting higher. So of course, we have this mental health epidemic in this country because
Right.
there's just so much pressure. You're trained to meet a very, very high expectation during like education, and then as soon as you're out, you're kind of lost because you're expected to do very little things for a very long time. And it's like it's hard to kind of readjust yourself, and it almost goes as far as like you forget what you learned in college, right? You forget what you
Mm-hmm.
learned in school because so much time goes by. That's what I think right now. That would, I guess, personally speaking, that would be my biggest fear, is like, because we're both in that stage of like we're just leaving college, we've only been in the industry for whatever
Right.
year, and I think my biggest worry would be, it is or has been, that I'm going to forget everything I learned. All of the things that we sped and quickly learned, and we like got to a certain point and specialized and all that stuff that I learned, I'm going to forget. And I think that's my biggest, like, I guess, stressor or worry. But it's very difficult to like communicate that with older generations because they just have not experienced that at all.
I think it's a fair concern. Like what you said, like it is fair. Like we're just out of our like finishing our like undergraduate. We want to make sure our skills are sharp. I
Right.
don't think it's the fact that they don't understand like where we're coming from. I think it's just they had to have this realization later in life. Like
Yeah,
how I
okay,
think
yeah.
about it is like because like you think about it, we're only like year one or year two out of college and you're already thinking I need to keep myself like up to speed. I need to continue with that pace of like being a high performer, like
Yeah.
successful and like keeping up with the times, because you know like just a 1 year or two things can change drastically in any industry, not just like technology.
Right,
So you're
right.
aware of that. I think in older generations, they were aware of that, but when they became aware of it was a lot longer in time periods. Like for
Yeah.
us, we know every year or two, we just need to keep up our game. We need to stay competitive because all our life, the competition has just been so competitive. For them, I don't think it was as competitive as it is for us, and even Gen Alpha has it worse than us. So I maybe when they're like, oh shoot, I need to keep my skills fresh. Like we'll be like 4 years, 5 years after college, not 2 years after college. So I think they
Yeah.
had those realizations later in life, and so I think that's where it is because I think that's where the gap is really because like That's where I get have some disconnect with my parents. It's like the things that I'm worrying about now is not what they worried about when they were my age. They had
Yeah.
different priorities in life. They had a different mindset. They were like, I just want to get married. Nowadays,
Yeah.
women can have careers in whatever. Like I don't the first it's not our first thought is not to get married, not to have kids. At least for you and I.
Yeah.
And so like there's like a we have a different mindset at the age that they did. So it's really hard to connect with them because we're basically in uncharted territory for them. Like they don't know how
Right,
to talk
right.
to us
Well, it's
because
not
they
even
didn't go through this.
we probably freak them out a little bit because we're like, oh, we'll be fine. It'll
Yeah,
work itself out. We
yeah.
got time. It'll be okay. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, we do all this stuff and they're probably like stressing really hard because, like, like when they were, that young or whatever, it was like, I mean, I don't know. It was probably there was probably a little bit more pressure to have to settle down and like, at a certain age or something. I think I already passed that age, which is really kind of terrifying, but that's okay. Um, yeah, so
Same.
right. Uh, I don't know. I agree. Do you think so? I feel like oftentimes a lot of these all of the generations usually like either tease each other or kind of hate each other. Like why do you think that exists? Like that tension between the generations? Like why do we feel the need to make memes about boomers, you know? Why why do we feel the need to make fun of like younger Gen Zers? I don't understand like what is the fascination between each of the generations?
I think it's because it's such a different mindset. Like I like if like you're so focused, like not you, but like in general, like we're also focused on the way that we think or the way we approach things. We don't really consider innately what other people could be thinking about the same problem. So I think it's that more than like a ha you suck or like not like you suck, but
Yeah,
like
yeah,
haha
yeah.
like making fun of you.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you know, we go, oh you're just a boomer. Like that's just like it's jokingly. It's not like oh boomers suck, but like I think it's just a different mindset that we couldn't imagine thinking about because of the way that we think ourselves. I think that's
Yeah.
the main reason why there's just like, oh my gosh, because sometimes Gen Alpha, I'm like, wow, I wish I had that much confidence in life. Is how I feel sometimes. Like when I see some of them, like in middle school or whatever, like young, they're like really young, right? So I'm like, I was not
Yeah.
like this when I was that age. So it's
Yeah,
like, holy
well,
crap.
if
So
if you think about it, some of them like basically grew up during COVID, so very weird.
that is so true. That is weird. Pandemic
Gen,
babies are Gen Alpha. You're right.
yeah, pandemic babies are Gen
Gen
Alpha.
Alpha. Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a video of one of them not knowing how to put on shoes because they were a pandemic baby, and just that in my head was like, whoa. Like they weren't just used to wearing shoes because they never went outside for their
Oh
first
my
3 years of
God.
their life. So
That's
I'm like, wow, imagine at the age of 3 learning what shoes are, like what they feel like and how like that's boggles my mind for some reason. I don't know. It's just a stupid thing to think about, but it's like,
no,
whoa, that's weird.
no, it's wild. Well, it also begs the question like, okay, are the next generation, like I'm actually very concerned about how society, like how we interact with each other in the coming years, right? Because now there's all this huge generation of kids who literally, and including us, I'm not gonna like disclude us because we have been in it for long enough to have this as well. But like we just don't know how to talk to each other anymore. That like the number of miscommunications that happen, like we just don't know how to talk to each other anymore. And that's like in a conventional way, unless there's a phone in front of us or we're calling each other, like does physical interaction,
That's so true.
like the initiation stage at least, like the initiating of physical interaction, does that even exist anymore? Like everyone is just kind of all in their own little.
I think there's different approaches. Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's different approaches because like if you think about it, my like friends who are more millennial like would more they'd more likely call me if they want to talk to me about something, or I have a few friends who, or I have one friend, she knows who she is. If she's listening to this episode, I don't know, but
Oh my.
if there's like a long rant she to do. You know, you and I, like, I would text it out, like, but for her, she
Yeah.
would voice message it. Like, she's
Yeah.
like voice message, and she'll like voice message rather than like type it out. I think there's just different ways people like use technology. So I think that's the reason why, because like you're right. I think we just don't know how to like communicate with each other, and like I think the main thing is because we do it over a screen now and it's not physical.
Yeah.
But like even just the way I think maybe it's just the way technology's impacted, but like just the way of like first dates and like communicating, like doing mixers, like happy hours, they're so different. Like
Yeah.
it's so hard to do. I get what you're saying. I hopefully did not tangent topic her what
No,
you were
no, no,
talking
no.
about,
No,
but
no, that's exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I 100% agree. And like yeah, like more long distance relationships can happen and like more it's the world is your oyster. You can date someone in the other side of the world and it's like not that big of a deal. Like just pretty wild.
but also yeah,
Sorry.
also like thinking too, like we always are like the boomers and the Gen Xers have given us so much problems. Like we know climate change, we know like all these really big problems that are being thrown at to us because we have to deal with it, or they're not going to be alive to deal with it. I wonder what we would be like, what we would be passing down, you know,
Oh, what
like
garbage are we doing
to the
now that's
next
gonna have
generation.
repercussions? Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
um, probably a lot that
or
we
unaddressed garbage that has snowballed to us that we're just like, let's just give it to the next person in the
oh
line.
god, oh god. Yeah, no, see, this is why this stresses me out. No, but yeah, no, I don't know. That's pretty wild. I don't think we're probably doing a lot of things that they will have fun. Probably just climate change, not gonna lie. It's gonna just keep getting worse. I actually question whether we even there it I have a very cynical take
If
on
we actually addressed
climate
it.
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're saying we're addressing it, but are we actually going to address it? Can the industries keep up? I don't know. I don't know. That's a little depressing to think about though. So we won't. Um okay, let's move on to cuz we haven't really addressed Gen X all that much. And Gen X
Mhm.
is our parents essentially, right? It's I believe 1965 to 1979. So, what are some positives and negatives do you think there are between the generation gap between us Gen Zers and our parents' generation Gen X? Do you see eye to eye on stuff? Where do you deviate?
Um, I think where we see eye to eye is like, I mean, maybe it's just me. I can't really talk about general anyway, so I'll just talk about me.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it, yeah, I think the value of hard work is something where I see eye to eye with my parents and like with Gen X. Like you have to work hard to get the results you want. You can't just idly sit by and expect results. Like I get that and I understand that and I fully embody that as my individual self. Um, I think though, like the where is like we deviate is like being a little bit empathetic to different situations because sometimes I'll have conversations where they'll be like, "I had it worse at this age," or "I had it worse when I was
Mm,
like XYZ," and I'm like, "I get it, you had worse, and you were able to provide me a better like starting ground as who I am now." But there are other challenges that you might not have faced that you should also credit, like that are struggles too, or like things to worry about because you didn't just because you didn't have to worry about it at that age doesn't mean it's not a problem, you
right,
know. And I think that's where
right.
like the riff is, and so that's where I see it because like it's very much like my way is like the proven path. My way is like the hard-earned success. If you don't necessarily follow it, is it really hard-earned success? Or like if you necessarily don't do the same thing, not follow it, but like you're not the X like steps 1 through 3 that they get to a certain thing. If you're not doing those same steps, it's like you got it easier.
Right, right, right. Which yeah, and I think that also comes in do you think that mindset is ever going to change? Like, do you think they'll ever evolve out
Like
of
if
that
we were to
sort of
get older,
if they were to get older, do you think their mindset would evolve and change out of that as they see what they've given us?
Oh, maybe. Honestly, I feel like people when they get older, they get more reflective. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
because you're getting closer to death. You're like, oh, I should probably start thinking about how I live my life. Because I know
yeah,
there are some instances like that where I've had with like older, like in family members who are like were really stubborn when we were younger, but like now that they're really old and like unfortunately have health issues and stuff, they're like more reflective of their life.
yeah.
Maybe so. Maybe I don't know. It's maybe a cynical take, but like
I
I
hope
think they might
so.
start understanding, or I think the putting yourself in one's shoes will be more apparent because like when we start having kids, our parents are going to start being like, I wish I had. I remember when I wished I had this when I was like having kids or
Right.
raising children, and might give us impart us advice or impart us support in that way. So maybe, um, but yeah, I'm not too sure. What do you
I
think?
mean, I can see it being because like I mean I think that's essentially what's happening with the boomers and the millennials, right? Like I don't know. I feel like
Mhm.
the boomers are we make fun of them, but I think there are a fair amount of boomers that are also being reflective and like understanding of what they've given us, or what they've given the
Yeah,
millennials, which
yeah.
now they're giving to us. So, I think I'm hopeful. I mean, you can't not everyone's mind is going to change like that, but it is nice to know that like,
It's
at
hard.
some point, yeah,
Yeah.
at some point those conversations will be had and those reflections will be made. And yeah, I don't know.
Do you think the relationship or the mindset that we have with an older generation is going to be the same when we become that older generation?
Probably. I well not in this well, it not in the same way, but I feel like we're gonna look down at Gen Alpha the same way that millennials look down on us sometimes, in that our experiences are just so different that there's not going to be that much we relate to, except for like, oh, how do you not know that? What do you mean you don't? Like, let me teach you about the good old days. Like, we're going to get there for sure, you know?
You don't think we'll be more empathetic? I don't know. I'm like thinking
I
about
don't
like, do you think
well,
we'll have a nicer approach, like in bridging
we
the
might.
generation gap,
We
or
might because
yeah,
we are the after social media people, and I feel like there's like a standard in society right now where you have to be like um very particular about how you express and talk and use language. Like I feel like especially in terms of like teaching people, like I don't know, there's I feel like there's a level of emotional intelligence that is kind of spreading through social media and spreading through like just our generation. Like there's an expectation, there's more moral, like strict, like moral codes that people follow in terms of
on average?
yeah, like well, and I feel like people have the language to discuss their feelings now, which I don't think the older generations had as much. Like there's like,
That's true. Yeah,
like we can have a very normal conversation with our friends about mental health issues for the most part, I would like to think. Um and it's like not that crazy of a conversation. Like it's a very articulate, like therapized with very particular words and like names for what we're going through. So I don't think the older generations had that. So maybe when we get older, we will
that's
have
true.
that. We'll be able to utilize the emotional intelligence that we did gain very quickly, and apply it to the younger generation. It might happen. I I always found it that me and my parents were kind of like learning things at the same time, and I feel like that has something to do with the fact that they like immigrated to a society that was completely different with completely different rules and structures and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
I feel like in that way, we actually kind of like we teach each other on a lot of things. In that way, we do kind of see eye to eye, but where we deviate maybe is like they really are in the mindset of like we just want to go to work, come back, and then have hobbies on the side. But it's interesting too, because like as I've talked to them more, I feel like they're also have slowly become like, where do I find purpose in my life? Like,
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point. It's like that. It's the mindset of like work fuels the passion for them,
mm-hmm.
and for us, it's like work is the passion to some
Yeah,
extent. So yeah, I agree with
capitalism.
you. Woo
Woo!
But let's move to a different relationship. In the sense of friend dynamics. I know you and I we also talked about this earlier in the episode where we have different range of friends. Like we have older friends, younger friends. Um, so how do you see the friend dynamics changing if there is a generation gap? Or like based on the generation or like the gap in it, how do you see your friend dynamics?
I feel like, well, okay, I feel like with Gen Xers and like older millennials, I could usually get along with them fine if they're willing to like kind of see my viewpoint too, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there are some Gen Xers and Boomers who are very dead set on their mindset and their way of life and how they grew up. I think they're struggling to recognize that the world has moved on.
Yeah.
It's different. It's different now, and like priorities are different. Difficulties are different. Everything is going 10 times faster than you were when you were here.
Yeah, I think I'm like similar to you. Like I can connect with so I have friends who are like older, like millennials, and I think
Mhm.
I gel well with them is because they're also more forward thinking in the sense of they understand that age is just a number in the sense of like mindset or like
Mhm.
growth or like approaching different like life things. And so that's why we get along well because they don't see me as like this youngin that like isn't like doesn't know what she's talking about. Like they don't
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
assume that because I'm like so young, and I think that's why we get along so well. And even like I have like some of my like older friends too, like are aunties. Like I have
yeah,
some friends that are aunties, and I think I gel well with certain aunties is because they're willing to learn a different perspective forward, or like they are more open minded about talking about different things like mental
yeah,
health or like it might not necessarily be like for them directly. It could be like my kid is going through this and like things like that. Like this podcast has actually helped me make auntie friends. If I don't know if that sounds weird, but like they'd
no,
be like
yeah,
my like son or like my kid was going through this and like I didn't know how to really talk about it. Like what are your thoughts? And then we just have a deep conversation. And I think that's like something that I value in a friendship is being able to have deep conversations. And so I think that's why I generally like my heart, like you said, gravitates more to the older generations just because I've had more of those types of conversations with people who are older than me.
yeah,
So that's why I kind of align myself in that way. I'm a quote unquote old soul in that way. Um, but yeah, I think with my younger, that's something that I feel like I need to work on. I've always been like insecure about with like my friends who are my age or younger. They're more carefree. They don't really like
mm,
think too much about like certain things, and for me I'm just like I can't go like through life just like that. I don't know, it's just like
yeah,
really hard for me to connect with them, and they're having just like they're like just super chill about certain things. Like some of my friends that are like my age that are like I'll worry about my career. I'll worry about what I want to do with my life like 5 years from now, or I'll worry about saving up money 2 years from now. It's okay if I'm still in debt. And I'm like, for me, I'm like, I am like, I need to have like a plan. I need to like
yeah,
think
yeah,
through
yeah,
things. I need to like think about them. And for them, they're like, I don't care if I'm still like broke. I'll be broke for the next. Like for me, I'm like, I don't want to be broke anymore. I want to be like making money and being able to use it leisurely in like X years, and I want to start investing so I can have money to spend
yeah,
before I
yeah,
retire. Like I have like that's where my mindset's at. It's like for me, I'm like I can't really like gel well with people who are like let's just go with whatever. Like not really, let's think about the now. Let's not think about the future. Like type
yeah, yeah.
mindset. And so it's really
I
hard for me. That's why I'm like, kind of insecure. I'm like, am I too uptight? Like that's what
no,
I think about. I don't know. Have you
I
ever had that?
I feel like okay. I feel like it depends on personality, right? Regardless of gender, it depends on personality. If there are a lot of personalities
Right.
in every generation that is very good at like kind of putting themselves in someone else's shoes and like listening for a little bit. Um so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I think the where the friend dynamics change really is when they're like you said, they're younger or they're older and they follow the stereotypes of their generation, like to a T.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't really, like, there's not really much we can talk about and relate to because we just have different mindsets. Like, I don't know. Um, I don't know. Like, I personally get along more with like a little bit older mindsets, like people who are again like us, who are like kind of, what is it, the old soul or whatever. I don't know.
Planners.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
even planners, because hell, I don't plan any. I wish I could plan, but I don't know. Everything's up the air, but that's okay. But it's like, I don't know. I'm more willing to discuss between the generations, but younger people don't seem to want to talk to us all that much. So I don't really, I get along more with older
I get
people,
what you're
you
saying.
know? Like younger people, I feel like they
Yeah.
kind of just like make fun of everyone, and they have their own little like social, like how they talk to each other, and they have their lingo and stuff, and I just don't
Okay, I
understand
think
it.
you're wording it better than me. Because, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess for our final question, we should probably revisit that one. Like I was thinking, we could revisit what we were talking about before
Hmm.
of like the problems and things that we would pass down to Gen Alpha from our generation, and kind of think forwardly because I know we like to do that for all of our episodes.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess if we had to re-ask that question, like we ponder a little bit now, like the things that we were passed down, or things that what would we be passed down? What would we be passing down to Gen Alpha? And what do you think would that foreseeable future is?
There's just a lot of like social issues I feel like we're giving them. We're giving them a lot of mental health issues probably because everyone is forced to be aware of everything that they're going through all the time. And there's like more words for
Mm-hmm.
it, and the mental health discussion is so much bigger. So I feel like we're definitely giving them more mental health issue, at least anxiety. There's more anxiety, more depression, more because the pressure cooker again is going. So there's more requirements, there's more things that they have to accomplish, and there's like a perfectionist sort of attitude, and there's going to be definitely mental health issues, definitely climate change.
I guess in a good way though, the stigmas and challenges that our older generation had like kind of brushed aside is no longer a problem. I feel like
Hmm.
personally, like going back to what types of things are like talkable in society or like conversable or conversational with other people, like the fact that like just go get therapy is like a slang
Hmm.
like in our like generation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that opens a lot of doors of conversations that necessarily weren't an option older. And I think the opportunity for representation of our communities is better, at least within America. I can't really speak to anywhere else, obviously. I think it's getting better in our generation, and it's going to get even better in our future generations because people are not going to be okay with things being not inclusive or diverse. So I think that's going to get for the better. Outside of the problems, like I know the problems
Yeah,
are
yeah,
still going to
yeah.
be there. They're always going to be there. But in thinking in a positive light, I think that's what they won't have to worry about in that sense, I feel like. Or it'll be easier to address. Like even
Hmm.
workplace scenarios. Like I was talking to a mentor of mine who was co-oping she is like graduated UC like 10 years ago, and she was saying in her co-ops she faced like severe sexism where like
Hmm.
she's a chemical engineering major where she basically worked in like a plant environment, and she would have to wear skirts and blouses to work because that was like the dress code for women
Hmm.
back in the day. And she had instances where like her manager asked her to like go up a high ladder, pick something up, and he would sit under her and look up her skirt purposely. And like so those types of things, that's an HR violation now. I don't think that would be allowed. I feel like those types of severe drastic instances, I hope to God it doesn't occur as much now because people are more aware of how to handle themselves in the workplace, and they're emotionally aware, self-aware. And so I think those are the types of things that, at least in the future, looking forward, we won't have to worry about that in the workplace. Like,
Yeah.
even if there's going to be a generation gap, like it won't be drastic and severely scary. Like instances like that, being a minority in
Yeah.
the workplace.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, definitely. Like, I think there, yeah, a lot of the taboos that existed in the previous generation is basically not uplifted, but it's less of taboos now, you know? People are more willing
It's
to
more
talk about
normalized.
it. Yeah, more normalized, more, I mean, yeah, like sexual aggressions in the workplace. There's more, maybe there's more opportunity to red flag it, you know? So that's in
There's
that
not a
way.
fear of speaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's less, well, there's still a fear to speak out, but there's less of it. There's more outlets in which you're able to speak out. Like, I feel like that in itself didn't
Yeah.
exist before. There's a lot more places where you can. You might not necessarily feel comfortable, but you can. So I think in that way, that's definitely great. Even the discussion around like LGBTQ relationships, like the spectrum of LGBTQ, all this stuff, a lot of like mental health issues that are like disabilities, like learning disabilities, like um, disabilities
Yeah.
that of the mind, I feel like are being analyzed and scrutinized during our generation, so in that way they'll be more aware in the next generation. Hopefully, does that awareness have is I feel like that awareness is a double-edged sword, because I think sometimes thinking too much can lead to doing nothing. So I think that it's a
That's
double-edged
true.
sword, right? Right, like I think there's definitely like a positive and a negative to that, and which is why I mentioned mental health issues before. Like we're like we're like helping them understand their mental health issues and almost giving them anxiety as well in that process, you know? Like cuz
That's so true.
um
That's so true. As we become more aware, there's more pressure to
mhm.
figure it out. I feel like I can tell like I for at least for us, I have so much pressure trying to make sure I figure it all out. Like
Yeah.
I can manage everything. So I can imagine like if you're the more aware you are, the younger you are, how much because I'm sure they're also like stressed. Like there's so much going on in the world. There's so much
Mhm.
going wrong. It's our job to fix it ultimately. I'm sure that like that awareness of it is very like high in pressure.
Yeah, and that pressure happens so early because everyone, like, you can get information on the internet so quickly, right? Like they are aware,
So easily. Yeah.
they're just as aware of the world's problems as like we are. And as Gen Alpha, they shouldn't have to think about that until they're much older, but they are because of social
Right.
media and the internet, just the internet. Google. You could search up anything and know everything, and eh, yeah, and I think that awareness is something that we're definitely giving them. And yeah, I guess we'll see how they deal with it. um
Yeah, that's so ominous. Like
Sorry.
dun
But
dun
yeah,
dun.
da, 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 da. Actually, that's more
On
happy. It's
that
like
note,
dun dun dun. Yeah. On that note, this has been fun talking to you, Kirti, about generations and different generations. I really do wish Gen Alpha the best. Please, I'm so sorry for the things that we're giving you. And yeah, so I this has been great. Thank you to our listeners for sticking with us until the end. And yeah, we'll just sign off here. Thanks for listening. Bye.
so before you kind of leave us today, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Ravi Ray Audio. You might have heard that our intro and outro music is a little bit different this season and is definitely upgraded to a next level. That's all thanks to Ravi Ray, who was our last guest in season 2, and he agreed to help us out with our music for season 3. So thank you so much, Ravi Ray, for all your help. And if you guys want to get in contact with him to collaborate with any projects or work with Ravi Ray Audio, we are linking his information to the episode description so you can reach out to him or see all the other projects he's done. And thanks again, Ravi, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.